All right, well, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today for our fall 2021 UW-Madison CBE Fall Town Hall meeting. I'd like to really just bring you up to speed with some updates since our spring town hall meeting. And this is going to be with respect to faculty hiring, some recent awards in the department, and some updates on the undergraduate program, a brief update on our continuing renovations, and then we'll have our guest of honor, who I will keep secret just for now anyways. So in terms of CBE faculty news, it's been a really exciting time. I did put up some information that we also covered in the previous town hall, just to kind of illustrate the excitement and the expansiveness of our hiring over the past year. So our newest hire, who many of you may not have heard about yet, is Dr. Whitney Liu. So she's very much in the polymer synthesis, characterization, and design space. Whitney did her PhD at UC Berkeley with Natash Balsara. And then she's currently doing a postdoc with Paul Neely at the University of Chicago. It's a virtual postdoc because of COVID, so she's actually still at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and she's basically doing a remote postdoc with Chicago. So these are the times we live in now. So it was exciting she could continue her work, and she'll be joining us in January of 2023. So about a year from now. Siddharth Krishna is going to join us in January 2022. So Siddharth is very much in the catalysis space. He works from catalyst synthesis all the way through reaction optimization for a variety of applications, including energy and sustainability. So Siddharth has a UW-Madison connection. He was a PhD student with George Huber and Jim Dumasic. And since graduating from UW, he's been doing a postdoc with Raj Gunder at the University of Purdue, or Purdue University. There we go. And then I won't say too much about Styliani because I'll be introducing her next as our guest of honor, but she was the third person that we brought on board in the past year, and she's actually in-house now and started with us in September. So lots of new and exciting things going on in the department with respect to faculty hiring.
Yeah. Nothing is working.
So how about faculty recognition? So this is just in the past few months. I have a few recent awards to get people up to speed on. So Professor Reed Van Len is this year's recipient of the AICHE ComCEF Award. So it's a mouthful. It's the Computational Molecular Science and Engineering Forum Young Investigator Award for Modeling and Simulation. Bottom line, this is the top. This is the top. Yeah.
Sorry, Eric. Do you have a slide to show us?
It's up right now. Yeah.
Oh, all I see is the opening slide, but maybe that's just me.
I
don't see any slides either.
Okay, so can we see it now?
No.
Well, let me get it back up then.
Okay.
I'm not getting anywhere with this thing. Oh, go through.
How about now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to go back to the presentation. Still see it?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. So not to leave anybody out, here are the pictures of the three people that have joined our department recently. So hopefully you can spot Styliani in the crowd. She's joining us today. So as we go into our recent faculty awards, so this ComCEF award, in brief, Reed is, the top young investigator in his field of modeling and simulation, as according to AICHE. So this was very outstanding recognition. Manos recently received the Robert Burwell Lectureship in Catalysis. So this is given out by the North American Catalysis Society. And George Huber won a prestigious local award on the campus, where it's a competition between all people on campus, all faculty on campus who are in the mid-career. So from tenure to 20 years out. And so they only pick a handful of these on campus, and George was one of those recipients of the Kellett Mid-Career Award. So in terms of undergraduate news, our total enrollment for the department is now up to 536 undergraduate students. Okay, this is not just freshmen. This is all the way through the program. I'm happy to note that it's a really diverse undergraduate population, with about 40% female undergraduates in the program and 7% underrepresented minority in STEM. So this is really exciting as we continue to make sure we're offering a degree to a diverse population of undergraduate students. You'll notice here on my second line, people are excited to be back on campus and in the labs and in the classroom. I can't say this enough. The in-person instruction is a completely different animal from online instruction, and obviously online presentations, like I just had the hiccup here. So as an anecdote, normally when we do our advising for what people should be taking in their next semester, you give them the option of, well, you can email me your course plan, or you can come stop in and talk to me and talk about sort of career trajectory and so on. And very few students normally would take you up on the in-person discussions. They normally just fire off an email and that's it. And so just talking with the faculty in the department, it's been unprecedented this year. Everybody wants to come in, sit down in the faculty offices and have conversations. And so this is the opposite effect that you might think of in terms of COVID making everything easier to do remotely. The students actually want to be back in faculty offices and having those conversations. And so I think it's a great opportunity for advising and career advice going forward. And then the last point I'll make on the undergraduate program is just some of the pictures down here that you see. These are undergraduates that are in Andrew Greenberg's chemical engineering in the community course, and they staff these tables with hands-on activities. This is actually on Capitol Square. So this is Science on the Square. It's something put on with Madison Children's Museum, along with the Dane County Waste and Renewables Department. And what we have here are undergraduate students that are helping kids in the community really understand recycling. So these are students that were showing one of the processes in George Huber's Chemical Upcycling of Waste Plastics Center, or the CW or CUWP. So this was, again, just another example of the undergraduates getting out in the community and sharing some of their excitement for engineering, math, and science. So some renovation news. As many of you know, we have a large-scale instructional lab and research laboratory renovation underway. The goal for this is to start construction in the summer of 22 and then open in the summer of 2023. So the main educational space involved with this is what we would all call probably summer lab. We're calling it instructional lab because it houses actually more than just the unit operation lab in summer.
Everybody's muted.
And so what I have here are just a few architectural renderings of what this space is going to look like a little over a year from now. And so what I'd like to point out on the bottom left picture, this is basically the entryway from the Camp Randall side of Engineering Hall in the basement. Current summer lab would be over here on the left, where you can see the W crest, the university crest. And on the right-hand side is newly acquired space from the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department that did house a large laboratory that we're going to completely renovate. And the right-hand side that we're completely renovating in new space is going to be housing most of the large-scale equipment. So you can envision this as the hard hat area or pilot plant area. That's shown down here in the lower right-hand corner. So you can see the distillation towers, humidification towers over here on the right. This is going to be a full 2-story height room. So we'll be able to have industrial type equipment in that area. And then on the left-hand side is what we fondly remember as summer laboratory. You'll see it's a bit more open now without all the walls there. But if you look inside what we think this space is going to look like, which is the top right photo, you'll notice there's natural light in there. And actually, you may not have recognized that at the top of the summer lab in the basement, there are windows all the way through there. So those are going to be opened up and allow a lot of natural sunlight down into that lab space. So it won't be the so-called dungeon that we often hear people referring to. So we're really excited with early donations, with lead gifts. We're already over 50% towards our fundraising goals for this project. And as a little bit of a plug here, I'll just point out that all the donors to the project will be recognized, and there are still some naming options available if you're so interested. So just some fun stuff here. So we had a brick breaking event in late October where really the first demolition occurred. And you'll see here just a few pictures from that. So this is that basement hallway. So take the people out and compare that picture to the one I just showed you. And I think you'll be astounded as to the transformation that's going to be taking place down there. But we'll see, even with this large sledgehammer going, the damage, not so much, right? So there's just a little bit of deconstruction that's gone on. And here's former Chair Regina Murphy and Rafael Chavez, a longtime instructor in the summer lab, giving their efforts to add to that deconstruction. So this will really go in full deconstruction mode in the spring. And I'll point out, we've already taken out the distillation column and many other of the large process equipment pieces. And so those will be in storage until it goes into the new space with the plan of summer of 2023. So with that, I'm going to stop talking about the department and let one of our new stars tell you a little bit about her work. So Dr. Stiliana Avramadou, she'll tell you how to pronounce it correctly, perhaps, joined us in September. She did her PhD at Imperial College London with Staros Pistakopoulos, and then went on and went through a series of different positions at the large systems engineering group at Texas A&M University. And we were lucky enough to have her join us within months of interviewing. So she's won numerous Best Paper and Presentation awards. She had fellowships at each stop of her education, including at Imperial College and from the Republic of Cyprus for her undergraduate degree. And you'll notice I said Cyprus, and I think that's important because the weather in Madison is just changing. So it's slightly different than Cyprus. And we're hoping that she's going to, really settle in and, like Manos Mavrakakis, get the appropriate winter clothing to handle the Madison winters. So with that, I will hand the floor over to Stiliana and let her tell you a little bit about what she's working on in her research laboratory.
Thank you, Eric, for the introduction. Let me share my screen. I think you need to stop sharing. Yep. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm honored to be able to show you my research and get some feedback from you. So just a small overview of my very short talk. I'll start by going over what I have been doing during my PhD, and then walk you through what I'm planning to be doing here. And the main area is circular economy, and I will use coffee as an example. So during my PhD, I have been working on solving optimization problems. So computational algorithms to solve nested optimization problems that have multiple objectives. And I have been applying those techniques to many chemical engineering problems, such as planning and scheduling integration or model predictive control. And I'm compiling right now all this research that I'm doing into this book that should be soon out and available. I have been also working on data-driven techniques such as machine learning and embedding those into the optimization algorithms to solve these nested optimization problems that I was talking about before, and also embedding them into model predictive control case studies. And using all these algorithms again to tackle sustainability-focused applications such as minimizing the stresses on food, energy, and water elements in different process systems. And finally, the area that I'm currently working on and what I'm planning to be working on in the future is circular economy systems engineering and looking how to use these tools and other tools from our community to accelerate the transition to more sustainable supply chains. So I'll use coffee, as I said, as an example to show you what tools we're hoping of developing and stuff. So I'll use a case of coffee and let's see how coffee is currently produced. So it starts from a plantation where we have the coffee trees. Then we're able to collect these coffee cherries, process them into what is known as green coffee. And all this is happening in this brown zone that you see here. Then this green coffee is being transported to around the world, where it is further processed and roasted to what we know as roasted coffee. It gets packaged and then delivered to our supermarkets and coffee shops for us to enjoy. So just 1 cup of coffee, and that's 10 grams of dry coffee through this supply chain uses huge amounts of water. So 140 liters just for 10 grams of coffee. And this all water is being used for irrigation mainly and for processing. Then huge amounts of energy for the processing and transportation. Then as you know, after we brew our coffee, most of it is left in our filters. So more waste is created there. The rest of the parts of the cherries are also a waste. Many of us use a lot of plastic cups, stirrers, and packaging. So that's another form of waste. And through this huge amount of energy, a lot of CO2 emissions is also emitted. And those numbers again are just for 10 grams of coffee. So let's take a closer look at the supply chain and see where we come up with all this waste and energy needs. So every single steps in the supply chain produces some form of waste, from the water that is contaminated with fertilizers at the growing stage to expired coffee that is left at the shelves of our supermarkets. Also, we do use a lot of natural resources, nutrients in the soil, water, we said again, fossil fuels for packaging and stuff. Also, energy is of course needed in every single step of the process. And usually this energy comes from fossil fuels, and also it generates some greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, so that's the traditional, or what we mostly have implemented right now, and this is called the linear economy. So what if this is the linear economy, then what the circular economy is? Again, the linear economy is when we use a lot of resources to make something, and then at the end we're just trashing it. Versus a circular economy where we're trying to limit the amount of natural resources that we use, and then figure out ways to reuse and recycle any waste or the product itself, so we can limit at the end then not the landfill waste that we generate. Okay, so let's go back to our coffee supply chain and see how we can transition this into a circular economy. And the first way will be to tackle the energy source. So we need to move away from the fossil-based sources to some renewable energy sources. The next way is to figure out how to use reusable materials whenever in the supply chain. So one option will be to change the packaging to some reusable packaging. And then we need to figure out how to collect all the waste and produce alternative products out of all the waste here. And finally, we need, in an ideal case, we will need to return any natural resources back to their source. So this is the ideal case of the supply chain in terms of circularity. This circular economy has been promoted by many governments around the world, both US, Europe, China, and then many companies, both in the food industry, energy industry, and technology. So everyone is promoting it, but we're not seeing a lot of progress. And I'll talk about the challenges right now. Why aren't we seeing this progress? And from a chemical engineering perspective, how can we tackle some of those challenges? And that will be what I will be focusing in my research. So the first challenge is, as we're trying to transition to circularity, the supply chains are becoming more and more complex. More stakeholders are added to it with all these recycled loops. So we, as chemical engineers also, we were just focusing on the industry level and looking at the objectives and variables that the industry can manipulate. And their objectives were usually an economic perspective of everything. So now with these interconnected supply chains, we need to start looking at how the government plays a role in these supply chains and how the government and societies can affect the operation and both economic and environmental sustainability of supply chains and the profits and sustainability of the industries themselves. So what I will be looking into is trying to add those decision makers into the current process systems engineering models that we have through this multi-agent modeling, multi-objective optimization techniques that I had been working on in the past. And looking again at the coffee supply chain, we see that all the supply chain has different stakeholders involved, and this supply chain is happening in at least 2 different countries. So we need to take into consideration at least policies from 2 different countries and legislation there. So modeling this is very difficult, and figuring out how to coordinate the whole supply chain is very difficult. So that's one thing that I will be looking into. The next thing is the multi-scale nature of those supply chains. So now that we have added all these different loops and options, changes that are happening in the unit operation level might just well affect what is happening at the supply chain optimization level. So figuring out the ways to bridge the gap between our models and integrate them into a holistic model that can take information from the unit level back to the supply chain level is something that I will always be looking into. And here I have the coffee supply chain model that we have created. We see that we have so many different processes and so many different options. So figuring out how to integrate this model by figuring out ways to bridge both the time scales and area scales in this model is something that we will be looking into. Another challenge is the uncertainty. So as we're expanding the supply chains, more uncertainties are happening or might be happening. So demand variability is one, cost variability, resource variability. And here I'm showing some demand profiles for water and energy, or like the renewable energy sources, how they're varying in every second or every minute. So taking these uncertainties into our optimization and figuring out how to design resilient supply chains and robust supply chains is something that we will also be looking into. And to do that, we will be deriving robust optimization formulations to figure out better designs. And the final thing that matches again with the first one is how do we assess the different alternatives? And we need to take into consideration, as I said before, both social, economic, and environmental factors. For example, this coffee supply chain has all these alternatives. So we need to figure out a way to assess these different alternatives and decide which are the best or which alternatives are more circular. And that cannot be just assessed with greenhouse gas emissions or profit and stuff. So we need to figure out a holistic way to incorporate different metrics into one and apply those into our modeling and optimization studies. So I'll be working on tackling these 4 different challenges through our work that we will name Circular Economy Systems Engineering, and we will try to accelerate the transition towards circular economy supply chains by using circular economy systems engineering. So our aim is to glue together these different chemical engineering areas through circular economy systems engineering, put all our knowledge together into forming these modeling and optimization tools to propose how we can transition to better supply chains. And here I have some of the group members. So we have one PhD student, Jay. I don't have his picture yet, but he just started like a couple of weeks ago, and he will be working on this robustness and resiliency of supply chains. We also have 2 undergraduate students, Ryan and Ethan, working on the circular economy supply chain of beer. So we're trying to have another example that we can maybe apply in Madison in a brewery here. We have Sanvi, another undergrad, working on measuring circular economy for companies. So coming up with a metric to evaluate the circularity of different companies. And then another 2 undergrads, Soraya and Tamer, working on energy systems engineering. So thank you for listening to me. If you want to know more about our research, you can go to our website where there are more details there. And I'm open to any questions.
Thanks a lot, Stiliana. I did see one question from Elda in the chat, so I'll just read that for you. So what
Okay.
system are you going to start with? Was coffee just an example, or what are you starting with?
So coffee is just an example, but I'm still working on it. We have some people in Texas working on some experimental studies of how to use waste from coffee. So I definitely want to keep working on that. But since I moved to Madison here, and I think beer is a very interesting thing for many people around here. So we're using beer also as an example and trying to apply our techniques to the beer circular economy. And then I'll have also like work on plastics with other professors from the department.
Any other questions from the gallery for Stiliana? Okay, Stiliana, if you could stop sharing your screen. And so now if people have, I know we're 1 minute over, but if people have a few extra minutes, we'd like to invite you to stick around and segregate by the generation you think you would best fit in, particularly if you did summer lab at UW-Madison. And it's just to get together for a couple minutes after the Zoom with other people from a similar generation and maybe share something that you still remember today about summer lab or how summer lab may have helped you in your career. I think it's useful and fun to kind of share these with each other. So if you're willing to stick around, I'll be in the 90s. So that'll be my generation. So I'll see the 90s folks there. But to everyone else who can't stick around, thank you very much for coming, and we'll certainly be in touch for a spring town hall.